No inspiration and mobilization was necessary. The Arbiter fleet, which had been holding back for a long time, had their emotions stirred up. The space warriors, led by Mars, were fixated with a planetary battleship. Every destruction of such battleships counted. This was indeed a domineering space carrier, but it was useless against super space fighters. And the guards on the battleship were not his match because he was Mars. Violent blasts and shots flashed continuously, lighting up space. It also sent shocks to the entire world. News of Arbiter inflicting serious damage to Aslan's core fleet spread throughout the entire Milky Way alliance instantly. The Aslan Empire was utterly defeated while in an absolutely advantageous situation. According to the reports, only 1/10 of the core fleet managed to escape. This was extremely rare in the modern history of space battles. The key was that in a disadvantageous situation, Arbiter only lost barely 1/10 of its core fleet. This shocked the entire Milky Way alliance and countless war tactical analysts instantly. The Battle of Rose Higher had been recorded in history books. The name, Ren Yixuan, had been recorded in the history books, so had Lin Feng's name. However, he would forever be associated with the disgrace of defeat. This was the most humiliating loss of the past 5 decades. However, from this moment on, the name Ren Yixuan resounded throughout the Milky Way alliance. No one would ever look down on this lame person. No tactical analyst would dare to call him an immature lad who was only an armchair strategist. Even the best of the tactical analysts could not have fought a more beautiful battle. The Thorn of Brahma had shocked the Milky Way alliance. News of the victory reached Arbiter. All the generals and ordinary citizens from the planets were burning with righteous indignation and waiting eagerly. If Aslan dared to make an airstrike, they would make sure that there was no return for the coalition, even if they had to fight to the last man. The entire world was discussing this amazing turn of events. Just when everyone thought that Arbiter would be exterminated, a man named Ren Yixuan had presented the opponent a fatal strike. Although the war was still ongoing, the nature of the war had changed. Arbiter did not depend on luck. The coalition could not stop this new battle tactic. The news had spread to Tita Star. Elder Mu Sen held an emergency meeting immediately and announced that Tita Star was in level 1 war readiness status. The sudden change in the international scene meant that some ambitious countries were ready to make a move too. Sirius, Manalasuo, the Dark Empire to name a few. Unrest within the Milky Way alliance was about to start. However, while everyone was still recovering from the shock, the pride of Aslan, Prime Minister Kashawan, was assassinated while making a speech at the Milky Way Alliance's Roland Garros. The assassins were a Heaven rank master and 5 other top-level Earth rank masters. 2 of them were from the Dark World. Even the protection team and personal bodyguards of Kashawan could not react in time. Even though Kashawan had been extra careful and had Heaven rank masters around her, she made the mistake of placing them too far away from her. On the other hand, it was a completely suicide mission for the assassins. Although the Heaven rank masters protecting Kashawan managed to strike and seriously injure the assassins, they were unable to stop the fatal strike. The wheels of history had completely spun out of alignment. Assassinations had always been the customary method since ancient times. Methods need not be new as long as they were effective. Kashawan had been too arrogant. Although Arbiter's loss had been great, getting rid of Kashawan was still a bonus. The move by the Dark World was obviously to create more chaos. It was undoubtedly beneficial for the Dark World for the Milky Way Alliance to be in a warring state. Hence, they had sent out 2 Earth-rank warriors, and both were all top 10 masters. At the moment of her death, Kashawan was surprisingly calm. In fact, since the start of the war, she had expected that this would happen one day. This was a real war, and all unscrupulous means would be used. Kashawan smiled ever so slightly during her last moment. No one knew what she was thinking. The heavy defeats on the battlefields and the death of Kashawan from assassination, all of this had made matters worse for the Aslan Empire. However, the domino effect was only just beginning. The Arbiter Republic made an official declaration through a third country. The leader, or more commonly known as the Great Elder, of the terrorist group, the Saint, was, in fact, the previous leader of the Aslan Empire, Constantine Aslan. These were all conspiracies of the Aslan Empire. He had everyone fooled with the Battle of the Oracle. The Aslan army and the Saint had worked hand in hand to destroy the coalition fleets. Arbiter had been framed. Arbiter could never stand such conspiracies and invasions. For the invaded Arbiter, they were not concerned about how the others perceived the truth. The entire Arbiter army would fight for the honor of Arbiter. They would destroy the Aslan Empire. This was Arbiter's style. They had revealed the truth to everyone, it was up to them to believe it or not. They would be attacking Aslan. Those who had helped Aslan would be the enemies of Arbiter. But if they withdrew in time, Arbiter would not want to become enemies with them. Their target was only the Aslan Empire. In fact, prior to this, rumors had been spreading in many countries that the mastermind behind the Saint was the Aslan Empire. However, they were only concerned about comparative forces and interests. But now, Arbiter had actually turned the tides. Especially after all countries had witnessed the Battle of Rose Hire, they came to the realization that before they could counter-defend against the latest battle tactics of Arbiter, going against Arbiter would only be vain efforts. All the countries began expressing their public opinions. Basically, there had been a change in attitudes. They had either remained neutral or they were still holding on to their doubts. But none were willing to take part in the war. This was now the fight for supremacy between the Aslan Empire and the Arbiter Republic. The coalition that had been besieging Arbiter began to retreat. The first to retreat was Lea Sphinx. This was closely followed by the Maka Republic and the other countries. However, they did not immediately burn their bridges. However, they questioned the justification of the war. Hence, they no longer wanted to be part of the war. The fleets that had been besieging the Arbiter planet began to retreat successively. The remnant fleets of the Maya Empire had also chosen strategic retreats. It was obvious that their fleets had completely lost their combat effectiveness against Ren Yixuan's incredible tactics. They had to minimize their losses and tried to preserve their strength. Besides, Kashawan was already dead. The international situation had changed drastically. Although Kashawan was but a single person, that Iron Lady had a very strong international influence. If it was someone else? The current Prime Minister? He was useless and did not have much influence, both internally within the country and internationally. The post of the Prime Minister was indeed not made for everyone. In comparison, Arbiter was riding high. Some countries were now considering joining Arbiter to attack Aslan. However, everyone was still a little hesitant. 2 days after the retreat of the coalition, there were great celebrations throughout Arbiter. As such, it had greatly boosted the confidence of the Arbiters. A new generation of Arbiter soldiers represented by Ren Yixuan had received promotions. Ren Yixuan had truly become a one-of-a-kind military god. In Arbiter, only the strong were worshipped and trusted, even if they were lame or blind. It was really straightforward. In addition, after this battle, the core strength of the younger generation, like Mars and the rest, were looking to Ren Yixuan as the new leader, just defending. This was not the style of Arbiter. Arbiter was the most aggressive country in the entire Milky Way alliance. Aslan had been defeated. It was now their era. However, Arbiter was not foolish. Another major bomb was dropped. The second elder of the Saint had accepted the political asylum of Arbiter. In his public statements to the Milky Way Alliance, he gave an introduction to the situation at the Saint. The Saint was a righteous group. It was to continue the inheritance of the last heroic era, the inheritance of the ancient physical arts. But it had been taken over by the Aslan Empire and turned into a tool for personal gains. He was now calling all the disciples of the Saint who were in exile to raise the flag of justice and crusade against Aslan. This was a heaven-rank master. Regardless of whether this was true or otherwise, this was Arbiter pressing the Aslan Empire once again. This was an eye for an eye. The final outcome would be decided by the power of arms. The Arbiter Republic expressed understanding and tolerance for the countries that had been invaded by the Saint, as these countries were also victims. As long as they could rise up and oppose the supremacy of Aslan, all would be forgiven. As a result of the demise of Kashawan, the Public Affairs Department of the Aslan Empire seemed utterly chaotic. The key was that no one was as persuasive as Kashawan. The King of Aslan stepped up. But he had been behind the scenes for a long time and gave the impression that he was just a wallpaper. As time went by, he became precisely that. Furthermore, he did not have Kashawan's charisma. In addition, the current situation was in a very state, hence a person with such a personality could offer no help. Besides, the rumors were spreading that the great elder of the saint was the father of the current king. Everything was in chaos. Where was Aina? Where was the most trusted princess of Aslan? Although Kashawin had the most power in Aslan, Aina Aslan was widely respected. The people trusted this princess. However, where was the princess when Aslan was in distress? Was she in ill health? This was not an excuse. Under such sensitive situations, the more Aina did not make an appearance, the more chaotic the situation became. Aslan was encountering its biggest crisis since the founding of the Aslan Empire. Right now, on Titan Star, Wang Zheng had just finished a day of training. The Tita army was now in a very pumped-up state. However, the international situation was changing day by day. The Aslan Empire could really be in danger. Wang Zheng did not feel that Aslan had no strength to fight back. In actual fact, in terms of strength, Aslan was still the strongest. However, in terms of morale and public opinion, Aslan was in a very precarious state. They had been too reliant on Kashawin. As soon as Kashawin passed away, Aslan became too reactive. Wang Zheng had been hesitating whether to tell Aina or not. He had been thinking on his way back. He finally decided to be truthful with Aina. Regardless of the choices she would make, it was her choice to make. Back at his little cottage, a fragrance was coming from inside. Aina walked out, smiling. "You're back, my dear. Try my skills today." Aina looked unimaginably cute with the apron around her. "What's good today?" "No matter what I've cooked, you had to finish it and say that it was delicious." "I've spent the whole day on it," replied Aina poutingly. Okay, wifey dear." Although he ruled the battlefield, back at home, Wang Zheng was like a big, mischievous boy. Some men, regardless of their age, would play the coquette with the women they loved. "Go take a shower first. You stink, don't pollute the delicious smell." "Haha. This is the smell of a real man," said Wang Zheng. He decided to finish the delicacies first. If he told her now, they might not have the mood to even eat. Not only were there delicacies, Aina had even prepared some good wine. To be able to be served on Wang Zheng's table, it had to be the best wine of the Titans, and very strong too. Everything was decorated by Aina personally. In a short while, Aina came out all dressed in a white evening gown. There was a beautiful flower garland on her head that was like a tiara. She looks absolutely stunning. "What's the big occasion today? This is so formal. I don't seem to have prepared anything," said a smiling Wang Zheng. Aina raised her glass. "Today is our 6th anniversary since we first met, shouldn't we celebrate?" "Oh, we've known each other for so long already. Aren't we headed for the 7 years itch then?" commented a surprised Wang Zheng. Aina gave Wang Zheng a charming look. "Do you think this is a problem?" Moving her smooth shoulder to the side, her fair neck that was not wearing any jewelry was like nature's masterpiece. Her hand ran all the way down to her collarbone. This made Wang Zheng feel a little aroused. He should exercise more willpower. "Let's celebrate. Let's toast." Aina seemed exceptionally enthusiastic today. Wang Zheng definitely would not cower. He would take all that was given to him. Besides all the enthusiasm, Aina also performed a new Tita dance that she had just learned. When Aina performed it, the dance turned into a passionate and characteristically unparalleled work of beauty. This was a gift from God. In the midst of the spinning, her white dress slipped down. Wang Zheng was lost for words while looking at the goddess in front of him. A night of passion. Aina revealed a passion and power that had never been revealed before. It was as if she wanted to give everything that she had, not yielding, battling with Wang Zheng all the way. This was a feeling of being in heaven. There were no other needs. This was the most beautiful fit. The sky was clear, but the stars were hiding in shyness. Wang Zheng was sleeping very soundly and even snoring a little. Aina was already fully dressed by his side. It was not the clothes of the Titans, but the army uniform of the Princess of Aslan. Gently touching Wang Zheng's face, there was gentleness and reluctance to part in her eyes. But regardless of her reluctance, she still needed to leave. "I'm sorry. I love you." She kissed Wang Zheng's lips softly. Aina stood up and closed the door to the little cottage. If Aslan was not facing such a crisis now, if Kashawin was still alive, she would not have left. But now the country that had raised her and nurtured her was on the verge of extinction. She could not enjoy herself here and would not. She was, after all, the princess of Aslan. She did not want to say goodbye to Wang Zheng, because this would be forever. Maybe she would still be alive, but she would be a completely different Aina from now on. An Aina that would betray her beliefs. An Aina that would fight for Aslan. An Aina that she herself would even hate. But only an Aina like this could let her country and the countless people of Aslan survive. In the spaceport, there was already a space shuttle from Aslan waiting for Aina. Only she could save the Aslan Empire now. At least she could give the warriors of Aslan some confidence. They needed to know who they were fighting for. The royal family had been ruling for so many years. This belief had already been deeply rooted in everyone's hearts. At the spaceport, Mu Sen and the rest were all present. In fact, Wang Zheng was the only one who did not know. Yan Xiaoshu was helpless too. They only had a short break. However, Yan Xiaoshu knew that what made a person a human was the fact that he could not betray his own bloodline. Blood was thicker than water. Have a safe journey, Your Highness. That was all Mu Sen could muster. Thank you, everyone, for taking such good care of me all this time. If it is possible, let Wang Zheng hate me, said Aina. Her eyes were calm and determined. Aina had always been a determined person. Hence, when she decided that she wanted to be with Wang Zheng, she dared to stand up against Kashawan. Similarly, when she decided to take on the responsibility of protecting Aslan, she had thought things through thoroughly. Wang Zheng could not forget her, neither could she forget Wang Zheng. Unable to forget her was not practical, but he could hate her. The rest did not say anything, and Aina did not seem to need any other words either. The door of the space shuttle gradually closed. There were no goodbyes. Until the spaceship left, the spaceport was dead silent. Who should tell Wang Zheng this? Damn. Why are you all looking at me? I want to live an extra 2 more years, said Yan Xiaoshu. Zissou, you go. Boss will definitely listen to you. Yi Zissou shook her head. The rest were even more unwilling. In fact, when Aina closed the door, in the room, Wang Zheng had already opened his eyes. Although it was not equivalent to telepathy, Wang Zheng understood Aina very well. From a different perspective, if he were Aina, he would make the same decision too. No one in this world could live only for themselves. At least he could not, neither could Aina. Hatred? No, it did not matter that it did not last forever, but that they had once loved. This was bull's tea. It was definitely difficult to bear. Wang Zheng could truly understand. He loved this about Aina. He lit a cigarette. He did not care for such things, but at this moment, Wang Zheng wanted it very much. He was lying quietly by the lake, staring into the sky, as if sending Aina off. Solar System, Devil's Island Space Station. The first conference of the merger of the Solar System's military powers and the formation of the Solar System's coalition government was being held here. Facing international unrest, the conservative faction finally compromised. This was a major step for the strengthening of the Solar System too. On the rail elevator, Dramok was quietly looking at the Devil's Island below. The last IG selection seemed like it was only yesterday. Each and every scene was still fresh in his mind. Behind him was Achilles, Milo, Pai Xiaoxiu, and Dong Xiaoxia. They were also feeling regretful while looking at Devil's Island. Achilles and Milo were dominating the world, especially Achilles. That was the pride of the moon. The battle at Sig had helped the moon find their feeling of being at the top of the world, which was rare. The people from the moon did not have negative feelings about the people from Earth. In fact, the people from Earth had always been the leaders of the solar system. The people from the moon had no opposition to who the leader was. However, a leader should have his style and strengths. The people despised people who pretended to be capable even though they lacked the capabilities. That was until Wang Zheng appeared. In this era, the people from the moon no longer depended solely on themselves to regain their ruling position. Collaboration was necessary. But who would be the leader? Wang Zheng provided the answer. The course of truth never ran smoothly. The king's bloodline still existed in the solar system, as long as the people of the solar system were united. Pai Xiaoxiu and Dong Xiaoxia had also been dominating the moon in the past few years. Although their stages were far from comparable to that of Achilles, they were still the core strengths of the younger generation of the moon. Devil's Island came closer very rapidly. Everything turned dark and the rail elevator had descended deep into the underground of Devil's Island. Ding! The door of the carriage opened. What appeared before their eyes was a typical underground military fort. An officer walked up and saluted. "General Dramok, the conference is starting in 10 minutes. This way, please." A short distance ahead was a huge conference hall. Dramok, such airs. Always the last to arrive. Lai Wuqing's hoarse voice hit them immediately. Behind him was Lai Xin, donned in full military uniform. Lai Xin, whom they had not seen for some time now, exuded confidence and dominance. Dramok laughed. He took a look at the time indicated on his skylink. There was a minute left before the conference would start. He said, "Lai Wuqing, this is what I call punctual." Meng Ao led Meng Tian from the side and walked over. "Kiki, it's almost time. Let's start." Lai Wuqing took a look at the time and nodded. "Let's start." As the three took their seats, the entire conference hall quieted down instantly. Only the sound of breathing could be heard. Achilles and the rest were standing on the side. Although it was a conference, in actual fact, they were only there to listen. They did not have any voting rights. Of course, the significance of their participation was to raise their prestige in the army. This was a preparatory move before they took on bigger responsibilities. Meng Ao presided over this conference. He spoke quietly but went straight to the point. "Ladies and gentlemen, the 31st Solar System Federation Military Expansion Conference starts now. The first agenda of the conference is voting for the establishment of a unified operation and command system." The conservatives participating in the conference looked calm, but they could not hide their disappointment. The so-called battle command system was rocking their foundations in the army. However, what was even more embarrassing was that there was nothing they could do to stop the attempts of the revolutionaries. Their days of embezzling funds from military equipment were over. Military reforms were also economic reforms. The all-out war between Aslan and Arbiter did not have a huge impact on the life and economy of the people of the solar system, who had declared themselves as neutral. However, for the Solar System Federation Army, the impact of this war was no less than a direct explosion of a supernova. The battle tactics and combat qualities of the two strongest empires were clearly visible in this war. It had truly awakened the Solar System Federation Army. Would the Solar System Federation Army be able to face off with the tactics of these two empires? The ostrich policy was not useful. Before the war began, the solar system required a real revolution. Without the guarantee of strong security forces, the rise of the solar system was a false destiny. "I agree." "Agreed." "I agree." Rightly so, all the generals present voted. The conservatives had also lost their will to resist. Quietly, they also pressed the button for agreement. The last agenda of the conference is about the construction of the Oz fleet. Currently, 30 main battleships have been delivered. Now, for the discussion of the appointment of each ship. The Oz fleet was the joint fleet of the newly constructed Solar System Federation. There were no factions within the fleet, neither was there any division between Earth, Mars, the Moon, and the asteroids. The purpose was to maintain the interest of the whole Federation, not a particular area. This was the elite fleet of the solar system, equipped with the Marine Corps Air Combat Team. The purpose was simple: to create the #1 battle team in the solar system. There was no doubt that those with military power had the power to speak. Every position was fiercely contested. No matter which faction they represented, they had to show sufficient results to be placed. This team needed only the best. Such a discussion of appointments could not be resolved in a day's meeting. They had completed 16 appointments out of 30 captains. Achilles, Meng Tian, and Lai Xin were no-brainers. The fourth captain was Rastan, who used to be on par with Achilles. He might be one step behind now, but he was still one of the better ones amongst the younger generation. After the generals left, the youngsters who attended the meeting but didn't have the right to vote gathered together. The younger generation eligible to attend today's meeting were acquaintances. They had competed against each other during the IG selection. They were now in the same Oz fleet not by accident. The canteen was the only available option for food in the military base. Everyone was treated equally except for the generals. Demon Island also became the most important training base for the elites. Anyone who was sent here would mean a promotion was near. It was the holy land to every warrior. Achilles and the rest entered the canteen. Many of the warriors were already having their meal, discussing the international situation with great interest. It was completely different from before. Now, everyone's eyes were full of fighting spirit and hope. They were eager to venture out of the solar system. The lowest rank here was a second lieutenant. The canteen quietened down instantly when the new group of people walked in. Some of them were younger than them but already had the dazzling stars on their shoulders. The 4 youngest major generals of the solar system who had broken the promotion record. The sun god Achilles, Queen Lai Xin of the Lai family, genius of the Galaxy Military College Meng Tian, and the steel warrior Rastan. They represented the personal glory of each planet and the cooperation of the solar system. The young men behind them were also lieutenant colonels at least. They were the group of people who would rule the solar system in the future. Is that Achilles? He's more handsome in real life? Wow, we actually met them in person. I didn't miss a single battle in the tyrannical clash of kings, what an aura. Meng Tian doesn't seem as cold as I thought. That is our most outstanding graduate of our Milky Way Galaxy Military College. Those were eyes of envy and expectation. These ambitious young people were eager to have great leaders to lead them to glory. They were true international heroes. Unfortunately, Wang Zheng wasn't there. Wang Zheng was the one and only spiritual leader of the solar system. It was the Saruman snake led by Wang Zheng that created that miracle. It was also Wang Zheng who taught the solar system what cooperation meant. It would be perfect if Wang Zheng was here. If Wang Zheng was to lead a fleet, countless youngsters would treat joining him as their greatest honor. Achilles and the rest smiled, listening to the gossip around them. They were used to it and knew each other anyway. First, I'd like to congratulate Achilles, Lai Xin, Meng Tian, Rastan, the 4 captains. Please take care of us in the future, Yuan Yi said. He had just returned from Manalasuo and would be one of the deputy captains of a destroyer in the Oz fleet if nothing went wrong. This is the first time I feel there's hope for our solar system. We might have the chance to showcase ourselves before long, given the international situation. It would be perfect if Wang Zheng was back. Yuan Yi sighed audibly. Many wanted to fight alongside Wang Zheng. They could already feel the incomparable confidence from him all those years back. It would be a happy thing now if they became teammates. Wang Zheng will definitely return. A faint voice came from a face as white as snow, encasing a pair of determined eyes. Zhang Runan was no longer the Zhang Runan of the past. She was the most famous beauty of the solar system army. She wasn't interested in men interested in her appearance and even found them repulsive, perhaps because of her ability X. Rastan smiled. Zhang Runan, Wang Zheng's situation is a little more complicated. Tita might be better for him. You saw how they argued just now. It would be worse if Wang Zheng were to come but not be able to showcase his abilities. Zhang Runan smiled as well but didn't respond. That was also true. Don't worry about him. That guy should be having the time of his life now. Lai Xin smiled. Everyone here saw the Battle of the Rose Higher Starfield. That Ren Yixuan guy created the miracle of Star Wars. We have to think of a way to learn it. If not, we will be easily defeated. According to Intel, this is a new combat system. To be exact, we need a brain for the fleet and the rest be like the Ant system, controlled solely by the Queen Ant. The others are only workers. The problem is that not everyone has such power. An extremely strong spiritual power is required, and not only that, the trait of this power has to be group-oriented. There doesn't seem to be someone with such powers in the solar system, Milo said. This is only a prerequisite. Someone like that has to be sufficiently literate in military strategies, otherwise it's useless. Ren Yixuan used to be in the limelight in Arbiter as one with the highest IQs in war strategy competitions. However, he disappeared quickly because he advocated the use of force. No one expected him to be so strong. Ren Yixuan's game is really domineering and aggressive, despising the whole world, Rastan sighed. He has reason to, Meng Tian said. Actually, the solar system might have someone like that. Everyone's eyes opened wide. Impossible, we checked all the files. We would need at least someone with A-class spiritual power. There isn't anyone like that in the younger generation of the solar system. The technical department also judged that anyone over 40 years old would also face difficulty withstanding such high-intensity changes in control. He's similar to us, it's just that no one knew what he was thinking. If there was anyone in the solar system who could do it, he should be one of them, Meng Tian said. One of them? Who else? Yuan Yi asked in a blur. Wang Zheng, Meng Tian said. Everyone was stunned for a while. It seemed like Wang Zheng could do anything in everyone's hearts. It was unknown, but there was a possibility that Wang Zheng could do it. The other person is Xie Yuxin, Meng Tian replied. Xie Yuxin disappeared the moment they returned to the solar system. He didn't seem very interested in military recruitment, perhaps because the position was too low, or perhaps he didn't want to waste time in the army. However, during her time in the Oracle Star, Meng Tian came to know that Xie Yuxin's spiritual power was absolutely shocking even though his physical techniques were normal. He had never showcased his full strength. Xie Yuxin was as calm as a machine when commanding the battleships. Meng Tian might have been an elite at the Galaxy Military College, but she knew she could never compare to Xie Yuxin. Xie Yuxin? Many had never even heard of him, some had a fleeting impression. He's someone even Wang Zheng respects. He's a little strange. He was sent to Aslan for further studies but later transferred to Elite Academy X. However, his performance was exceptionally dull in Elite Academy X. His personality is the complete opposite of Wang Zheng's. As far as I know, we should be able to find him on Earth, Meng Tian said firmly. The Arbiter Republic was actively assembling their army and also contacting allies at the same time. The Aslan Empire had broken the rules first, and had completely inspired the aggression against the Arbiter Republic. The Arbiter Republic took the initiative to contact the underworld as well. They didn't have much combat power, but they were good at destroying things. This was just a question of price. Arbiter and the underworld had their own plans for the future. The chaos in this world was very suitable for the people of the underworld. They had a clearer idea now that the Milky Way alliance was developing towards the direction of war. The era of the underworld and pirates was coming. Aina returned to the capital of Aslan, Monte Ellis. The situation was, frankly, rather embarrassing as they faced the mounting pressure of the Arbiter Republic in the harsh international situation. They had been successful and smooth all these years under Kashawan's iron fist. They were unsure of how to deal with the situation now that they were the ones being defeated. There was also the assassination of Kashawan. It would have been chaos before the war, but it seemed like no one cared now. Arbiter had admitted to the murder directly, but there is no international condemnation. It could be said that there was actually no justice nor evil in this war, only a hegemonic struggle. Of course, Ryan was still going around, representing the peaceful side, hoping that the Arbiter Republic and the Aslan Empire maintained their cool. They had now paid a heavy price, but there was no need for the war to continue expanding. Any more and a war would sweep the whole Milky Way, and humanity would go backwards for decades. Almost all of the royal family and the politicians were in the spaceport waiting for Aina's return. There was also a fierce battle going on between the war and peace factions. Only a handful of people knew Constantine's plan. More people were definitely against it now that the plan had failed. They felt that it had brought disaster to Aslan. The Aslan people were only human. They now needed someone to either bear the brunt of the responsibility or to decide. No one was better suited than Aina. They needed Aina to decide to go to war. Similarly, they also needed Aina to bear the responsibility if they were to surrender. That was why they were waiting for her. The spaceport was heavily guarded. The ones to welcome Aina would only be the royal guards. The soldiers didn't care about this. They were still straight as ramrods. The space shuttle arrived, but Aina didn't appear. Everyone strained their necks and stared at the cabin door. What was happening? Was there an accident? They didn't hear anything of this sort. The trip was a secret and this was a non-war zone. It was impossible to have an accident. What had happened to Aina? Was she afraid? Or what, perhaps she didn't dare to face them? Thoughts flooded everyone's minds. They had to consider national interest, but they also had to consider their future. They had to face it no matter what. Mitchell walked out, stood by the side, and gave a bow just as their patience wore thin. Aina was out. Aina was in a gorgeous get-up with a cold, stern face. She exuded the aura of a goddess. Her gaze swept over everyone, and they all bowed their heads as their eyes came into contact with hers. An aura enveloped the entire spaceport. This was the majesty and the glory of Aslan. Aina's gaze didn't stop on the politicians. Instead, they were on the Aslan Empire's guards. She finally showed a small smile. Every one of the warriors felt that small smile. They tucked in their chests and tightened their grip on the guns. Yes, their princess was back, their soul was back. Aina appeared on the largest channel of Aslan 2 hours after she was back. It was the Aslan Imperial Satellite TV. The Aslan citizens waited. Their constant questions would finally have an answer. Constantine was also waiting in space. He was just one chess piece away. He never thought that his great plan would be crippled by a cripple. Only he knew what the prophet had predicted. That cripple was one of them. He ignored him even though he was usually superstitious because he was just a nameless cripple. He really didn't know how such a person could appear in the prophecy. He knew now. It was this cripple who had made him unable to return home. It was also this cripple who had destroyed the centuries of effort of Aslan. The expression on the face of the prophet while he was dying was still clear in his mind. The names of those 5 people, the era of human chaos. He didn't believe it because he felt he had everything under control. He was the strongest heaven-rank warrior. Wang Zheng, Lear, Xie Yuxin, Aina, Ren Yixuan. The 5 of them rocked the Milky Way alliance. Constantine wasn't at a complete defeat yet. He was thinking about the future. If Aina couldn't handle the situation in front of her, he would return. The ultimate deciding force was still power. The victor could change history. Aslan held the fate of 2 people in the 5, which was why Lear could survive. Aina appeared on TV punctually. Everyone, including the other countries in the Milky Way alliance, was watching. No one knew how Aslan was going to deal with this situation. They wanted to know how Aina was going to explain all this. Aina showed no sign of pressure. She seemed alert, even more beautiful and mature. Citizens of the great Aslan Empire, thank you for standing with the country during this difficult time. The Aslan Empire is about to face a war. I don't think it's going to be a difficult war, because the Aslan Empire is the strongest, unique, and invincible. I believe our Aslan warriors can win every battle. Aina's voice spread through the Milky Way alliance, revealing inspiration and passion. The people who were filled with despair suddenly felt passion and self-confidence ignite from the bottom of their hearts. Yes, they were the most powerful Aslan. What was a lost battle? They had spent the most in the military, had the best resource reserves, the most advanced technology and military enterprises, and countless elites. What was there to be afraid of? For the past century, the Aslan Empire opposed all terrorist organizations and paid the price with the blood of countless warriors. I, Aina Aslan, vow to annihilate the terrorist organization, the saint, regardless of the mastermind. Anyone who seeks to tarnish Aslan's actions and country are our enemies. The Aslan Empire officially declared war on the Arbiter Republic. Brave citizens of the Aslan Empire, we stood together before to create the most powerful country in the history of mankind. Today, we'll still stand together to destroy all enemies of Aslan. Victory will be Aslan's. Aina Aslan's powerful voice traveled into the ears of every Aslan citizen. Fear and worry disappeared immediately from their hearts. Yes, they were the great Aslan. How could the great lion be scared off by some wild dogs? The politicians of the Aslan Empire were shocked. They never expected Aina to give a speech like this. They thought she would probably just comfort the citizens, not declare war outright. Everyone was cheering right now. Since the defeat, the Aslan Empire had fallen into a state of panic. Now, they returned back to their invincible Aslan Empire. Such was the power of this woman. Numerous reports were at the conference. Flashes followed by everyone bending down. This was their highness, the princess. Aslan needed someone like that. Aina held her head up. This was the road she was going to take. She was going to lead the Aslan Empire no matter whether it was right or wrong. She had to say goodbye to her past when she walked out of the door. In the future, she would have to use all methods, even foregoing her principles, to do her best for Aslan. Outside, Aslan citizens were gathered in the plaza. Cheers filled the air when Aina appeared. The dignity and glory of Aslan accumulated over the years completely erupted at this moment. The powerful, majestic, unparalleled Aslan Empire. Bring it on, Aslan had never been afraid of anyone. Prime Minister Kashawin has been sacrificed. She was killed by the despicable assassins of the Arbiter Republic. Should we yield to such a country? Aina's voice loomed throughout the corners of the square. No. This was the roar of the people. Yes, many fingers were pointing at Arbiter to accuse them, but look at what they had done, hiring the killers of the underworld for assassination. I, Aina Aslan, am an adult. My father is aged. I am willing to dedicate my life to this country. I won't take a husband, nor will I have children. I will only have my home country. If you are willing to accept me as the queen of this country, raise your hand and tell everyone, tell the whole world, that I, Aina Aslan, am the queen of Aslan. Hundreds of thousands of people present in the plaza raised their hands, so did many people in front of the TV. This was the most unique inauguration ceremony in Aslan's history, done without the consent of the royal family, but passed by the citizens of the Aslan Empire. Constantine smiled. She was his bloodline indeed. She was flexible and decisive. She was undoubtedly top-notch in intelligence. Not only that, Aina's ability X was a rare force that could be transmitted through to the masses. She could infect and inspire any corner of Aslan. Such was her power. He would offer his life if it was necessary, but there was no more need for him to go back now. Even if there was chaos, it would be the Aslan Empire's chaos. 13. What do you think? Master, Her Majesty the Queen will bring Aslan toward glory. The Prime Minister won't have died for nothing, the 13th Elder replied respectfully. Master, I'm starting to feel that Wang Zheng and Xie Yuxin will be problems. Will the solar system become threats to us with them around? Constantine stared at the starry skies. Only the destined can kill the destined according to the prophet. Let's continue monitoring. All of them need a touchstone to grow. Aina will be the only one surviving. The 13th Elder bowed his head respectfully. Yes, the final winner will be Aslan. Aslan was in a state of jubilation. Calls for the queen to be long-lived were everywhere. Fanaticism was in everyone's heart. Aina's speech was infectious and relieved all doubts and at the same time showed Aslan's stand. Her unique ability could capture the hearts of Aslan's citizens. Anyone with an ounce of pride would be ignited by her hypnotism-like powers. Aina's image had been deeply rooted and everything followed through. The royal family was pretty united in the first place. They had finally returned to their normal operations, especially since the backbone of their system was back. Aina wasn't idle. She presided over various conferences. Aslan had suffered a huge loss in the battle this time. Arbiter wasn't any better either. They had to have a new fleet before the Arbiter forces reached Aslan. Every department was churning out at high speed. Diplomatic activities were starting as well. At this point, it was as Aina had said, it was a war between Arbiter and Aslan. There was no right or wrong. The other countries need only to choose who to side with. Ryan's thinking was too naive. The trend of war had taken shape. This was the fate of humanity, and no human could resist it. Of course, countries who didn't want to participate could remain neutral. The problem was, they might even be able to maintain neutrality if they didn't have enough power. The strong prey on the weak, that was the basic law of the universe. Aina watched the worst part of the battle in the strategic meeting. Lin Feng was back. He had escaped only with a small portion of the fleet. Lin Feng's frustration for this defeat was huge. If it wasn't for the fact that his country needed his analysis, he might have committed suicide. Lin Feng recounted the situation, assisted by the video footage. There was already a conclusion by Aslan's intel department. This was a new strategy. They had used someone with very strong spiritual power and a spiritual amplifier to control the entire fleet. The coordination and fault tolerance increased to unimaginable levels. The strategy wasn't complex, the difficulty was in coordination. Aina said nothing. The generals in the room were silent as well. The election of Aina as the queen was without question, and her attitude towards the battle was in line with the military view as well. Aslan would still be invincible if they managed to solve this problem. They could also kill Ren Yixuan. Every road led to Rome. The loss of the fleet was bearable for Aslan. Aina's speech had put Aslan in a better position internationally now. A beautiful woman had inherent advantages. Arbiter hadn't been doing well these few years, and the assassination of Kashawin wasn't the best course of action either. It only served to place Aina in a better light. Roland Garros, the Roland Garros in the vortex. Nothing was more awkward than now. Roland Garros had always been the political core ever since the Milky Way alliance was established. It represented the highest civilization of mankind and had propelled mankind to peaceful development. Many believed that this was the golden age in the history of human peace since no one dared challenge the Milky Way alliance. The Milky Way alliance lost its significance now that its largest supporters, the Arbiter Republic and the Aslan Empire, were fighting amongst themselves. The Milky Way alliance was operating more like a wet market now, with the politicians bickering away. Aslan and Arbiters made their stand while the ambassadors of the other countries had vested themselves into this competition of justice. No one believed that any of this would make any difference though. Only real strength would determine the winner. Everything here was just a facade from the rules of humans. The bottom line of the Milky Way alliance had been broken since Kashawan's assassination. It wasn't worth condemning anything, so the entire Milky Way alliance was in a state of unrest. In Elite Academy X, the elites wouldn't sit there idly and continue their studies with the war going on. Zhang Shan was taking a bath in the public bathroom after his training. The war was far away from him since the solar system was maintaining absolute neutrality. Moreover, to the other countries, the force of the solar system was always in a safe threshold. The solar system would always maintain the same position in the galaxy. It wasn't tasty food for the wolves either. Zhang Shan's thoughts on the matter were rather simple, and that was to expand the influence of the Saruman Snake battle team. After the battle, Zhang Shan had also made rapid progress and had passed the transition period. The years of struggle had completely transformed his body. After Sig and the withdrawal of Aslan and Arbiter, things had started to fly for the Saruman Snake battle team. They had attracted new blood and increased the combat power of the team. However, the war did affect the life in college after all. I just received a notification that Darrow was killed in battle. What? Are you sure? He was sent to the front line just because his girlfriend here was from Aslan. Evil war. Darrow just entered Elite Academy X how long ago? Rustling was heard. Other students came in, discussing the war. Zhang Shan wiped his tears away. He couldn't possibly continue staying at Elite Academy X, to be frank. Since Wang Zheng had left, he did feel like he was the king of the place, though he did feel like something was lacking. Zhang Shan just hadn't thought of what he would do. Return to Earth. Zhang Shan shuddered thinking about the training style of Earth's military department. He did hear about some reforms, but they were still led by those in power. There was just a change in figureheads. He was greatly influenced by Wang Zheng, not afraid of battle nor death, but he wanted to know what he was battling for, and hoped to find a place where he could put his abilities to the best use. The students of Elite Academy X were no stranger to battles, but war was something many had not experienced before. Not only him, Vincent, Takumi, Ao Ziwei, and the others were faced with the same situation. Manalasuo had started their massacre as well. The other strong countries saw the chance when Aslan was defeated. Aslan and Arbiter were clams competing against each other, while the other countries wanted to be the fishermen that fished them out. This was an opportunity for the entire Milky Way alliance to reshuffle their cards. Anyone could become the tyrant of the next era. There was no benevolence and fluke at the country level. Every country wanted to have the opportunity to become stronger and to obtain more resources. Some of the historical territorial disputes were being brought up again. There were signs of a war erupting. The order of the Milky Way alliance was now really tense. Unless Arbiter and Aslan waved white flags, it would be full-fledged war. Many peace lovers were calling out to them, calling out to the various countries to exercise restraint and maintain the hard-won peace. However, these people were also the ones who did not have those rights. It was impossible for Arbiter to retreat. The victory of Rose Higher had given them huge confidence. They also had to go through with the war to make up for the losses they had suffered so far. Aslan had the same issues on hand, so they both had the intention to proceed with the war. It was difficult to be organized this way. On Manalasuo's front, Jondi Lilac had entered the army. They had to find a way to deal with Ren Yixuan. That new tactic he had deployed had opened a door, a prelude to new frontiers. However, it was difficult to select a candidate. It was easy to find someone of similar caliber, but it was difficult to find someone to adapt to it. Manalasuo was ambitious, and had also started researching this new method. In this new age, an absolute leader in technology didn't exist. Vincent and the rest of the warriors who received the call from their motherland headed back. The Gemini Star was probably the country which advocated peace most strongly. They were against war, and their relationships with the other countries was the most ambiguous. The Mayan Empire had also calmed down after their setback. The news circulating internationally was that they were actively mobilizing their army. The Mayans were very excited, but there was no longer a need to side with Aslan. The Mayans wanted to stand at the peak. Another force, which was also the most mysterious force in the Milky Way alliance, was the Atlanteans. They were surprisingly silent throughout, which was very rare. They had always advocated peace, but it seemed like no country could really do that. Even a planet like Ghana Star was actively preparing for battle. Obviously, Aslan didn't intend to borrow the power of Atlantis in the early days of the war. However, it would be much better if Atlantis were to send aid now. However, there was no positive reply from Atlantis even now. Atlantis might not express absolute neutrality like the Gemini Star, but they didn't plan to send troops immediately either. Obviously, Atlantis had other plans and concerns. The Queen had a lot to consider. The Atlanteans were definitely a trustworthy force, but they had a fatal drawback: population. Their population was barely being maintained. If a war were to break out, it would definitely bring about a crisis to Atlantis. Unless it was absolutely necessary, they wouldn't send troops. Atlantis had an affinity for heavy weapons. They did not want to expose their own advantages to cause any trouble for humans. Maintaining a mysterious demeanor was actually the best way for them to defend themselves. After so many years of having a relationship, Atlantis promised that they would help if the Aslan Empire were to encounter a crisis. This was showing huge support. Obviously, the current situation they were in wasn't a crisis yet. Moreover, the morale of Aslan had been boosted ever since Aina returned. The real deciding factor was the military power in their reserve forces. Zhang Shan was at Elite Academy X and was very clear about the international situation. Aina had returned, haha. Their love was a really difficult one. Zhang Shan believed that Wang Zheng wouldn't fall apart because of this. It might even promote his growth. Wang Zheng was impeccable in all aspects, except in love. He had to be more liberal in his attitude towards love. Sometimes, letting go was the best way for both parties. Wang Zheng wasn't like Zhang Shan had thought. He had been very calm ever since Aina left. He seemed to have given it some thought, and he had put himself and all his energy into training the army and himself. Of course, he would also drag Yan Xiaoshu to the lake for a drink occasionally. However, it was apparent that he had not let go completely, since he had yet to leave Aina and his love nest. It was ironic. He had met Aina, who was at the tip of the pyramid, when he had nothing. Aina fell in love with him of that time. It was totally different from now, which was why the love was so deep. It could be understood, but it would still take time. Training was undoubtedly a very good way of relief. The giants were elated since Ada was very passionate. He defeated all the masters of the Saruman snake in a matter of days and won the support of the giants. They were now devotees of Wang Zheng. When myth and reality were combined, the result was faith. Wang Zheng floated on the lake. He was now in a particular state, a little bitter but also happy. A trace of calmness was embedded in the chaos. His emotions were full. Emotions were a type of experience. They made Wang Zheng's spiritual realm more perfect and calm. His spiritual power and physical techniques continued to advance as the lakeside boiled. Golden light bloomed from Wang Zheng's body. The Tita people prostrated themselves towards the lake. Such miracles were plentiful these days, and they believed it would bring prosperity to them. Tita babies born during this time seemed extraordinarily spiritual. The Tita people thought it was the blessing of Ada. Wang Zheng wasn't so superstitious, but the comprehension of heaven and earth did seem to produce spiritual fluctuations of sorts, which might have certain impact on the fetus. The origin of spiritual power was similar to the origin of life. Wang Zheng put his power away and flew back onto the river bank. Everything seemed to be freed and refreshed. His body and spirit seemed to have been tempered again. A smile appeared on his face. He should be closer to heaven rank now. Yi Zixu was waiting for Wang Zheng by the river bank. Yi Zixu smiled upon seeing Wang Zheng's expression. "Your smile today is most natural." Why, do you think I'm still in the sad state of breakup? Wang Zheng teased. You are Wang Zheng. If you are considered to be in a state of breakup, everyone should be in a sad state. Yi Zisu laughed. The serious star has used the excuse that they were pursuing pirates to enter our starfield many times over the past few days. Elder Mu Sen hopes we can respond positively. More importantly, Professor Allen wants to see you. Haha, old merchant finally remembered me. The only one whom Wang Zheng admired was the old merchant. He was the beacon of Wang Zheng's life. Old merchant's easygoing attitude was something he had to learn. The greatest happiness in life was to have a goal and to work towards it. Old merchant had always been incredible in Wang Zheng's memory. He seemed to have the world under his feet all those years ago in that small bookstore. Always fearless. He had been to the saint and now to Tita, but he had never changed. His eyes were filled with energy. This was true strength. He might not be a warrior, but he was invincible in his area of expertise. Wang Zheng felt filled with vigor every time he saw Old Merchant. Old Merchant smiled and caressed Wang Zheng's head. The only person who dared caress the head of the greatest king was him. Rara Durai might have given Old Merchant a sound beating if he didn't know his identity. Lad, you're doing rather well on Tita. A chip off the old block, Old Merchant smiled. Alan Tucker had the entire science world under him all those years back. Only he dared to look down on those toys of the Atlanteans. He mellowed down after experiencing ups and downs in life. He could finally be regarded as humble now. He had countless students after him even after he failed. Alan Tucker was a faith in the scientific world. The students he helped back then were now big names as well. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I hope I didn't disappoint you. You managed to obtain the greatest king, you pass. Old Merchant smiled, his eyes filled with pride and comfort. He didn't care whether Wang Zheng would follow his path. This was the true genius who reached the epic of the Milky Way Alliance at the tender age of 25. Humanity's technology had leapt by 50 years because of him. People might forget who the Prime Minister of the strongest country was, but they would never forget Alan Tucker's name. Sometimes, a look was enough to convey the tenderness between men. The last entanglements in Wang Zheng's heart dissipated. Alan Tucker was his role model. He shouldn't be entangled like this, but should take a huge step forward. I got you here today to look at an interesting toy. Of course, I have to thank an old friend of yours. Old Merchant smiled. Come with me. Wang Zheng, Yi Zisu, Yan Xiaoshu, Lan Ling, and Rara Durai followed him. Lan Ling didn't have a very good feeling about him. She knew him as well, a super genius who consumed the greatest amount of research funding in human history for a parallel space technology that wasn't realistic. However, this person was the person Wang Zheng respected the most, so Lan Ling could only do whatever she could to satisfy his requests. Luckily, he wanted super-gravity material and G material, both of which were plentiful in Tita. They restricted exports to the outside world, but there were no restrictions on the internal supply. Yi Zisu had a smile on her face. She was an insider. She had discussed Wang Zheng's breakup with Alan Tucker, hoping he could enlighten Wang Zheng. However, Old Merchant's reply was rather domineering. He wouldn't be fit to be Alan Tucker's successor if he couldn't even handle something so minor. Perhaps domineering men were all the same. Old Butch, why are you here? Wang Zheng asked, pleasantly surprised. Why do you not welcome me here? Roland Garros is too boring. I heard it's pretty lively here, so I came over, Butcher said. Don't listen to his nonsense. He wanted to come over once he found out I was here. He seems to have improved a bit since we last met, Old Merchant said. Everyone was in cold sweat. Butcher was also a famous scientist in the Milky Way Alliance. Every teacher in Elite Academy X was extraordinary, but Butcher just laughed it off because it was Alan Tucker. Every scientist had a similar problem. Their dreams and ideals were more important than money and fame. Alan Tucker was their hero in this era. Even the saint was respectful of him, even though they restricted his freedom. The international situation is chaotic now, so a few friends want to come to Tita, Butcher said with a smile. Butcher had come early. Mu Fengchen and the rest had plans to move to Tita, where Alan Tucker was for a while once the war finally break out. Get them to scram if they are not capable. They have to show their abilities if they want to stay. I don't have time to spare for useless people, old merchant imposed. Lan Ling almost dropped to her knees. It would be a great honor for any of them to descend onto Tita even if it was just for a short period of time. Their experience was different. It would help Tita tremendously even if they were just to give casual pointers. Come, take a look at our new creation. Old Merchant and Old Butch were both happy. For people like Butcher, it wasn't enough to be famous or to be stagnant. That degree of respect was limited. Had Old Merchant been stagnant all these years? Of course not. He had been proving his theory while teaching Wang Zheng. He was able to think and abandon the concept of win and lose. That was a state only a great master could reach. He was kidnapped by the saint afterwards and ended up gaining great technology from them. Most of them were rubbish, but there were gems amongst them. A canvas was pulled apart in the huge laboratory. A crystal mech appeared, its whole body glowing with the glamour of diamonds. Butch, show them your results. Old Merchant used the word, results, proving his satisfaction. Butcher was in a great mood. Teacher Allen conducted an in-depth analysis on the physical composition of the supergravity energy ore. That led us to realize that the combination of this mineral and G material can produce very astonishing results. The energy mine contains an active substance. Active, not parasitic? Yan Xiaoshu had a head full of questions. He had played quite a bit with that as well. Yan Xiaoshu had used the supergravity energy ore as a material for jewelry and had made tons of money with it. That which was rare was dear, and the supergravity energy ore was very pretty and was very expensive. This was an important line of goods that the Co Group used to enter the luxury goods market. This segment was going to perform miserably once the war started, but the military industry was about to get a huge boost. Young man, you have been with Wang Zheng for so many years. Why hasn't your brain grown instead of your stomach? Old Merchant's mustache rose in contempt. Yan Xiaoshu had met Old Merchant a few times in the past as well. He hid far, far away every time they met. Complicated theories and him were mutually exclusive. Grandpa Old Merchant, it's obvious that Wang Zheng is brilliant precisely because I'm dumb. My existence is very valuable. Tyrant Su didn't have any virtue other than possessing a sweet tongue. Rascal. Old Merchant shook his head but swallowed it all the same. This activity is a type of physical activity and is also the most advanced theory in atomic physics. Simply put, super soldiers can ignite this energy to meet the maximum agility for mecha. That would make movement errors infinitely small. It could be said to be one of the most advanced mecha of all. Of course, the super mecha are out there as well. As far as I know, they have a considerable number of super mecha. We are not about to lose out. Anyone with Earth-rank spiritual power and physical techniques would be able to control it. Wang Zheng, this is better than the runic mech. You'll have a different feeling. I gave it a cool name, Shiny Crystal Mech. Butcher's eyes shone. He hoped that his own theory could be verified. Alan Tucker's criticism of his imitation of the Atlanteans' mech made him feel worthless. He had always been small in the eyes of Alan Tucker. No one could ever surpass him. It could be understood though. There were so few as successful as him throughout the history of mankind. What are those two things? Rara Durai suddenly pointed to the two larger canvases beside them. Rara Durai, in fact, didn't quite understand why everyone was afraid of and respected this little old man without much power. The canvases were pulled away too. Rara Durai and Shan Meng's eyeballs nearly popped out. Yi Zisu, this lass isn't half bad. Smart and gentle. I think she's much better than that don't know what princess, Old Merchant commented. Yi Zisu blushed profusely. Grandpa Old Merchant, I didn't do much, and I've learned many things from you. Don't be humble, you do have a good understanding of mecha. I'm now interested in working as a consultant for the KO group because of you, Butcher said. There was the matter of face value, and Yi Zisu must have something special about her if Butcher were to mention it by himself. To Old Merchant, only a girl like Zisu was fit to be Wang Zheng's other half. A princess was pretty but useless. God knew when he would be able to carry his grandchild. This was his ultimate wish, everything else wasn't important. We summarized the advantages and disadvantages of the giant mech and armor. We finally found out that giants are still more suited for armor, but the performance of a general armor can't meet the needs of current warfare. This shiny crystal mech, however, will be able to meet it. Moreover, giants harbor greater energy than humans. This mech can bring the best out of the giants, Yi Zissou explained. Rara Darai and Shan Meng almost drooled when they had magical properties. They would have groveled on their knees and licked their feet if they could. Every soldier of the Saruman snake trained hard with discipline. However, the body was only a foundation. They needed to rely on equipment on the battlefield. It wasn't something bravery alone could help. They would be blown into pieces by technology if their own equipment could not keep up with that of their enemies. Tita had always been very clear about their strengths and weaknesses. The Ko group had been trying to solve this problem for years. Yan Xiaoshu and Yi Zissou had been working hard with a clear division of labor. Yan Xiaoshu had obtained some technology from other countries through Gabra and Jasper to solve some of their bottlenecks. Tita's construction fund was sufficient with their large income. Mu Sen invested all of it into their military and defense. The ruling class of Tita was different from that of larger planets. They did not have the slightest interest in enjoyment. They wanted to defend their homeland, which was why they never skimped on military expenditure. There still wasn't enough time. Tita's main priority now was to equip the ground forces well. Space forces were something unfeasible to them. Frankly speaking, they didn't have much combat power. It would involve the sales of warships, of which the control was very strict during peaceful times. They didn't have much negotiation power. Therefore, instead of setting up a space fleet with no combat effectiveness, it was better to devote their energy to the giants. Moreover, the natural conditions of Tita made it so that it wouldn't cause much impact even if their enemies were to obtain air dominance over them. Try it, let me see if you are worthy of your title of the greatest king or not, old merchant said with excitement. Wang Zheng logged into the mech, which was fitted with the latest login method. This technology came from Leah Sphinx. Jasper had a huge contribution to this. Every country was protective of their technologies. Self-development was Tita's current bottleneck. The current team used the most effective way possible to achieve the best results. Wang Zheng wasn't just a super warrior, he was also familiar with most mecha, from human mecha to runic mecha. Nothing was too difficult for him. He didn't waste his time in Ares College all those years before. However, Wang Zheng was stunned once he entered the shiny crystal mech. How could there be such a mech? It felt somewhat like the skeleton mech. The transmission of the G material was actually isolated. However, the pilot seemed to be wearing thick armor when surrounded by the shiny crystal mech. Visibility was very clear to the super warrior. There wasn't much obstacle to one's vision. It might not be too different to the layman, but it made all the difference to a super warrior. Masters like Wang Zheng knew what it entailed. Rara Darai and Shan Meng couldn't wait to enter the shiny crystal mech. They had a renewed sense of energy and flexibility once they had it on. The giants didn't consider too much, they only cared if they could operate them smoothly. Old Merchant and Butcher were kings of kings. They seemed to be able to tell the good and bad of the old design with just a glance. Their realm decided their method. This shiny crystal mech belonged to a class of semi-mech and semi-armor. It seemed crude, but it could bring out both defense and offense. The biggest problem of the armor was defense and the problem with giant mech was flexibility. This new shiny crystal mech solved both problems, but only the giants, with their strength, could control it. The crystal required considerable energy to activate. Is there a problem? Why is there no sign from boss? Yan Xiaoshu asked in confusion. He had witnessed Wang Zheng and Lin Feng's shocking battles. Yi Zissou kept mum but was also panicking. This mech was ready to deal with Tita's crisis. Each one cost at least a dozen times more to make than the previous one. Of course, the most expensive component was the large quantity of super-gravity energy ore required. However, the most important factor wasn't the cost, but its performance. Wang Zheng's shiny crystal mech suddenly rose. Yan Xiaoshu breathed again, while Yi Zissou was more observant. Wang Zheng was operating the shiny crystal mech even though the mech itself wasn't activated. The mech seemed to become weightless once it was activated. To a super warrior, the mech amplified their strength. They also had to withstand the limits of power bursts at the same time. The super warriors who had a thorough understanding of their inner universe had tough bodies. This kind of toughness would show on the mech. Normal mecha wouldn't be able to satisfy them. The super warriors were picky about their perfect mech. This shiny crystal mech was quite interesting and could be considered. The roof of the laboratory was opened and Wang Zheng's shiny crystal mech shot straight into the sky. Wang Zheng continued his acceleration to see if the mech could stand up to the test. Bang! The shiny crystal mech disappeared into the sky like a laser show. It got colder as he ascended. Any normal mech would have been impacted, but not the shiny crystal mech. Importantly, a super soldier could deal with this temperature change since the mech had strong physical and biological properties. The shiny crystal mech dived from a high altitude and did a super high-speed 316 degrees maneuver. Metal, wood, water, fire, and earth elements switched around constantly. He was testing its endurance. Wang Zheng realized unexpectedly that there was almost no hindrance in the switching at high speed. It was an impossible feat for the old mecha, including the Holy Light series. Of course, the Holy Light series was mass-produced and not the super mecha of the Aslan Empire. It fared well in continuous switching and compound abilities. Next was the most critical atomic blasting power. The people looked up to the sky directly above the laboratory. Constant explosions were heard. Colorful fireworks appeared and even the ground could feel the vibrations from the energy. It was impossible for Wang Zheng to test it on land. The buildings would have been blasted away. In contrast, the two giants were playing around happily with a lid on their power used. They managed to control their power after cultivating martial techniques. It wasn't good enough to use all their might in an attack. There had to be techniques involved. They quickly accepted this concept with their rich combat experience. The leaders of the giant legions had to study military strategies in Ares College presently. This was torment to the giants. They were not afraid of hard physical training and bloodshed, but they would rather die than to sit in class listening to lessons. The teachers in Ares College had to adapt. All of them were standing and on high alert, which would make them feel more comfortable at least. They had to pass both in combat power and in strategies class once they were made leaders in the Saruman Snake. It was now an absolute requirement for the elites. Actually, the giants weren't that dumb. Potential was like boobs, there would definitely be some available if you were to squeeze it. Rara Darai and Shan Meng adapted for a while before rising up into the air. Most of the giants weren't well adapted for aerial combat. As the leader of the giants, there shouldn't be such a limitation. They had flown in simulations, but this was the first time they had used such a mech, completely different from the ones they had used before. They were a little confused at first, but it didn't take them long to be basking in celebration. The Tita giants had flying instincts since they were of the wind attribute. They shouldn't evade the freedom of the sky. Lan Ling finally let out a sigh of relief. She was initially worried for the giants since they were not familiar with the sky. She finally smiled as they zoomed around the air in the shiny crystal mech. She might not be as calm and confident as everyone else. Perhaps she had not stepped out of Tita from the beginning to the end. Vision determined one's mind. Perhaps she should go to Roland Garros, Atlantis, and travel this beautiful world when it was once again peaceful. Bang! A rushed landing. Wang Zheng's crystal mech landed on the open space outside. He was followed closely by Rara Darai and Shan Meng. Wang Zheng smiled. Bring out your all and show me your growth. Good functionality was useless if there wasn't any resistance to getting beaten. Rara Darai and Shan Meng were the best amongst the Titan giants. They were of Earth rank and this mech could allow their power to be released. The two giants in crystal mecha danced around in a dazzling light. G material was a medium that could stimulate the supergravity energy ore. Rara Darai and Shan Meng believed in the legend of Ada. They went with all their might, causing Yi Zisu's heart to be wrangled. What were they thinking? This was just a test. In fact, there was no need to worry with Wang Zheng's strength. The strengths of these two giants combined the mecha and produced a wonderful change. Energy lines appeared on the surface of the mecha like totems. The lightning bolt on Rara Darai's forehead became even more obvious. A silver lightning bolt actually appeared on Shan Meng's forehead as well. A huge battle ensued in the skies and energy was being vented constantly. That was no threat to Wang Zheng. He understood the strengths of Rara Darai and Shan Meng very well, but didn't expect the crystal mech to be able to enhance them to this extent. The entire planet seemed to constantly supply them with energy through the supergravity energy ore. Rara Darai and Shan Meng's attacks got fiercer. They had similar feelings as power continued to be transmitted to them. It seemed as though the whole Tita was supporting them. It was a mysterious and unprecedented feeling. They could even feel Mother Tita's pulse. Roar! Violent power surged out from Rara Durai and Shan Meng's bodies. They were actually experiencing a breakthrough at this critical time. Wang Zheng's expression turned serious. He had always felt like this planet was special, but he couldn't put his finger on it. Wang Zheng's heart had many questions, but no one could answer them for him. Such signs, however, helped to prove his theories. Boom, boom, boom. Wang Zheng changed from defensive to offensive. Defending wouldn't do anymore. The shiny crystal mech might not be able to withstand it even though he could. He wanted to let Rara Durai and Shan Meng unleash their power since they were in a very good state. Experience was accumulative, but metamorphosis would happen in an instant. 20 minutes later, Rara Durai and Shan Meng finally emerged from that state. Lan Ling and the rest were dumbstruck when they landed. Wang Zheng walked out from the shiny crystal mech. Looks like the results are better than expected. It is comparable to the mainstream super mecha. We will have a good advantage if we fight in Tita. Wang Zheng's evaluation was more sincere. The design was more in line with mainstream, but it couldn't be said to be innovative. The focus was on the usage of the supergravity energy ore. That was what made the shiny crystal mech outstanding. However, Wang Zheng didn't know if that was a sort of resonance with Tita Star as a whole or something unexplainable that could absorb energy easily. Rara Durai and Shan Meng's eyes nearly popped out with admiration for Wang Zheng. Their strengths had improved once again. This sort of power was completely unthinkable before. Wang Zheng smiled. Remember to transmit this feeling around. I hope all the leaders in the Saruman snake will be able to wield such power. Ada, we will work hard. Rara Durai nodded seriously. He was a titan. He knew that the Titan star was facing a crisis. The main responsibility of the battle would land on the shoulders of the Saruman snake. The other armies would not be able to deal with the fierce battles ahead. Yi Zisu and Butcher had to debug the mech and tweak it further. Wang Zheng had some questions he would like to discuss separately with Old Merchant. Old Merchant and Wang Zheng enjoyed an energy drink from Tita. This was a health drink developed by the Co-Group. Old Merchant loved it. Old Merchant, I have many questions in my mind, Wang Zheng said after a long silence. Old Merchant nodded. Speak, child. I'll tell you everything I can since we are here today. Who exactly am I? This was a burning Wang Zheng always wanted to ask. His life became totally different after he obtained the Rubik's Cube. Only Old Merchant could answer. Old Merchant smiled and let his gaze soften, immersing himself in his memories. That was more than 20 years ago, when my space theory was progressing smoothly. I thought I had found the method to break through parallel space. Everyone else thought so too. However, I soon realized I was too naive. Wang Zheng pondered for a while. Parallel space is actually a parallel universe. It seems like we are still unclear about the location of our universe. Yes, I made a bold assumption. What science needed was guts and imagination. When you constantly accelerate the curved flight, a near absolute stillness of a blind spot appears. That was where the gap between universes were the closest, and there was a probability for them to be linked. I truly believe in this theory. Let's not talk about how low the chance could be, but if it linked, the release of energy might produce a huge black hole through the laws of the universe. The galaxy might even be swallowed up. There was no fear in Old Merchant's eyes, only excitement and longing. He was a madman through and through. After countless failures, something changed in my atom accelerator one night. It was the most unforgettable night of Old Merchant's life. He was alone in the laboratory, pondering over his theory. The impossible absolute stillness was suddenly achieved. It was impossible with the technology of the time, but that really happened. What was more astonishing was that the terrible consequences predicted didn't happen. In the atomic accelerator, a Rubik's Cube appeared, along with a baby. The Old Merchant gave up everything for research, but when he saw that little baby innocently smiling at him, he suddenly felt a sense of warmth. Like a fire engine going at full speed but coming to a halt all of a sudden. He knew that if this child were to be declared to the public, he would be biopsied to say the least. His life would be very different, which was why Old Merchant secretly sent him to the faraway Earth, while he kept the Rubik's Cube for further research. Wang Zheng knew what happened next. Old Merchant escaped from the laboratory and experienced a lot. He only cared about Wang Zheng's growth and safety now. He could only tell him all this because he was now able to defend himself. Wang Zheng was shocked even though he had mental preparation. I'm an alien? Wang Zheng had some realization over the last few years. I can't give you an answer. You don't seem to be any different from humans from my investigations. As for whether or not you came from a parallel universe, I can't be sure because I can't prove if my theory is right or wrong. That is too high level, old merchant smiled. Mission. This theory was a bit forced. Wang Zheng felt that his shoulders weren't wide enough to carry so much on them. He really didn't intend to be a savior, but from the perspective of Bonehead and Charcoal, he seemed to be carrying a lineage. Perhaps he was supposed to stop a world war? This didn't seem to make sense as just this bit of power he possessed wasn't enough. Moreover, war was also because of a social phenomenon. It indicated that the system and contradictions had accumulated to a certain degree and that further suppression was impossible. Old merchant patted Wang Zheng. Boy, don't think so much. Whether it was an accident or something inevitable, I'm happy with my decision. That was the most correct choice I've made in my life. You are living very well now. Do what you think is right, whether you are going to lead a quiet life in Tita or something else. Happiness is the most important thing. Wang Zheng smiled. Old merchant, don't worry, I'll take care of you when you are old, no matter what. Old merchant couldn't help but laugh. Rascal, I don't need you to bother about your old age. I'll rest in peace if I can hold my grandchild before I die. Yi Zisu is rather good. That lass is caring and doesn't have too much ambition. She will think of you and take care of you. Lan Ling is good as well. Her knowledge of the world might be slightly more shallow, but she will be able to give birth easily from her figure. Wang Zheng was dumbfounded. He couldn't link the terrifying Alan Tucker to the old merchant talking about grandchildren now. However, he could feel old merchant's genuine concern for him. He had many people who cared about him. Yan Xiaoshu, Yi Zisu, Ai Xiaolu, etc. It didn't matter where he was from. The most important thing of all was that he was Wang Zheng, an aspiring young man who had grown up on Earth.